So I want you to imagine, just for a second, walking through these heavy, weather-sealed doors of an Alaskan field station.
Oh, I love that setup.
Right. You step inside, and it is this fully working greenhouse lab. The air in there is super warm and, it smells really rich, like damp earth and growing green things.
Yeah, that classic greenhouse smell.
Exactly. And all around you, there are these intricate terrariums, active compost bins, breaking down organic material, and these incredibly detailed ecosystem maps pinned to all the walls.
It sounds like an amazing place to work.
It really does. But the coolest part is that running throughout the entire facility are these shining brass conduits and copper pipes, physically mapping out how nutrients and light move through the space. Living systems are built from matter and powered by energy.
Yes, that is exactly it.
And today we are going to untangle these two invisible forces.
That visual of the Bioforge Educator Lab is, honestly, it's the perfect anchor for what we're tackling today. Specifically, we're diving into section 1.2.5, which covers Crosscutting Concept 5.
Right, energy and matter.
Exactly. And the whole mission of this deep dive is to make these concepts crystal clear for 7th grade life science students, their teachers, and, their parents, too.
Okay, let's unpack this, because one of the biggest challenges in life science is that students, and frankly, let's be honest, most adults, we constantly confuse matter and energy.
Oh, all the time.
We just treat them like they're the exact same thing.
Mm.
But understanding the really profound biological and physical difference between them is the ultimate key to understanding how living things grow, how they interact, and how they survive.
Yeah, and that confusion makes total sense because our everyday language basically sets us up to fail.
How so?
Well, we casually say things like, I need to eat some food to get my energy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I say that.
Right, and we just leave it at that. We don't distinguish between the actual physical weight of the food and the inevitable fuel that's locked inside it.
Yeah.
But in life science, we really have to draw a hard line between the two. So matter means physical atoms. We are talking about carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. Matter has physical mass, and it takes up physical space.
So it's the actual tangible stuff, like the physical building blocks of the universe.
Exactly. And the cardinal rule of matter is that it is never created from nothing, and it's never destroyed into nothing.
It changes form.
Right. It's only ever rearranged. So if you look at the physical models in our imaginary Bioforge lab, matter is represented by these solid, looped, solar copper flow arrows.
Ah, okay. The copper pipes.
Yes. It is a physical atom moving from one physical place to another. But energy, on the other hand, energy is completely different.
Because it's not a substance, right?
Exactly. Energy is not a physical substance. You cannot, put a lid on a jar of pure energy and weigh it on a scale. Energy is defined as the capacity to do work or cause a physical change.
So in our Bioforge greenhouse, energy isn't the solid copper pipe. It's represented by the dashed glowing brass lines and the light-carrying tubes.
That's right. It's the property that forces the physical matter to move or combine or break apart.
Okay, so if I'm a 7th grader trying to build a mental model of this, I might naturally fall back on the idea that everything in nature just kind of cycles in a big circle. I mean, we hear about the circle of life constantly.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a huge misconception.
Right. But based on what you're saying, it's actually like a roundabout versus a one-way street, right?
What's fascinating here is how that analogy just perfectly captures the thermodynamic reality of ecosystems.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matter is the roundabout. Like a single atom of carbon can enter a plant leaf, get eaten by an animal, get exhaled back into the air, and go right back into another plant leaf.
Just driving in circles.
Exactly. It cycles repeatedly within and between systems.
Yeah.
It just keeps driving around the roundabout. But energy is the one-way street.
Okay.
It flows strictly through systems. It enters our biosphere primarily as radiant solar energy from the sun. It gets passed along from organism to organism, and eventually it exits the system entirely as unrecoverable heat.
Wait, unrecoverable? So it doesn't cycle back to the sun?
Never.
Yeah, once energy dissipates into the environment as ambient heat, it just cannot be gathered back up to do biological work. I mean, you can't shine a heat lamp on a dead houseplant and expect it to start growing again.
Right. That specific solar energy is gone forever.
Precisely.
Okay, so matter circles the roundabout, and energy drives down the one-way street until it leaves town. That makes a lot of sense. But it brings up this massive, highly intuitive misconception about how life actually uses these two things.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Well, like if I go outside and look at a massive Alaskan willow tree, common sense tells me that to get that big, It must have eaten a whole bunch of dirt.
Of course.
Right. It's sitting in the ground. It weighs thousands of pounds. Where else would the physical mass come from?
It is a totally logical assumption. And for centuries, actually dating back to Aristotle, the dominant scientific belief was that plants basically had tiny mouths in their roots.
Tiny mouths.
Yeah, and they just sucked up pre-digested soil.
That is amazing.
But in the 17th century, a scientist named Jan Baptista van Helmont actually decided to test this.
Okay, how did he do that?
He took a tiny willow tree sapling and planted it in exactly 200 pounds of completely dried soil.
200 pounds. Okay.
And then he just waited.
But he just stared at it.
Well, for 5 years, he literally did nothing but add water to the pot for 5 entire years.
Oh my gosh, the patience.
Right. And at the end of the 5 years, the tree had grown into a massive plant. It had gained 164 pounds of solid mass.
Wow.
But when he carefully dried and weighed the soil again, the soil had only lost 2 ounces.
What? 2 ounces of dirt cannot turn into a 164-pound tree. That math doesn't work.
Exactly. That empirical evidence completely shatters the whole soil-eating myth.
But hold on, if the tree didn't eat the dirt, did it eat the air?
Yes, effectively. Yeah, this is photosynthesis in action. Plants, algae, and marine phytoplankton are these incredible biochemical engines. They use radiant solar energy coming down that one-way street to pull invisible carbon dioxide gas out of the air, and they combine it with liquid water that they pull up from the ground.
Yep.
And they use the sun's energy to literally break the chemical bonds of that gas and water. They rearrange those carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms into physical sugars.
So they are building solid physical biomass out of thin air and water.
Yes.
That is wild. When you look at a massive tree, you're basically looking at rearranged air.
That's exactly what it is. The carbon atoms floating invisibly in the atmosphere are captured, and the solar energy is transformed into chemical energy, which basically acts like the glue holding those newly arranged carbon atoms together in a solid form.
Okay, so if a plant makes these sugar molecules or, an animal comes along and eats them, what happens inside the body?
Well, those food molecules serve 2 very distinct critical purposes. First, they provide the physical building blocks for growth. Yes, the matter. The carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms are reassembled to build new leaves, muscle, and bone. That's how a baby salmon accumulates matter to grow into a massive adult.
Okay, that makes sense. And the second purpose?
The second purpose is cellular respiration. This is a chemical process happening inside the cells that breaks the bonds of those food molecules.
Right.
And when those bonds are broken, the stored chemical energy is released so the organism can swim, stay warm, repair cells, all that work.
And as a waste product of breaking those molecules apart, the organism exhales carbon dioxide and water back out.
Exactly.
Which means, if you, the listener, take a deep breath in right now and then exhale, that carbon dioxide you just breathed out is the physical waste product of your cells breaking down your breakfast just to keep you alive.
It's incredible to think about. Photosynthesis captures energy and builds matter. Cellular respiration releases energy and breaks down matter.
Wait, but if respiration perfectly undoes photosynthesis in a single tree or animal, how does a whole forest not just cancel itself out to zero? Like, how does a giant landscape actually accumulate life?
To answer that, we have to scale up from a single tree and look at a food web. Historically, this concept is rooted in Raymond Lindemann's trophic dynamic models from the 1940s.
Trophic dynamic models.
Right. He shifted the focus of ecology from just, cataloging species to tracking the literal pathways of energy and matter.
Okay, so let's picture a massive Alaskan ecosystem. Sunlight hits the cold ocean, and microscopic phytoplankton capture that solar energy to build their physical bodies.
Yes.
Then a salmon swims along and eats millions of those plankton. The salmon is taking in their matter to grow its own body and taking in their chemical energy to power its swimming.
Exactly.
Then that salmon swims up a river, and a grizzly bear catches it.
But when we track that transfer, we run into the 10% rule.
The 10% rule.
Yeah. Every time an organism eats something, it only successfully stores about 10% of the energy from its food into its own physical biomass.
Hold on. If only 10% becomes bear or salmon, that math is terrifying. If I eat a 1,000-calorie burger, I'm only storing 100 calories of it. Where on earth is the rest of it going? Am I just sweating it out?
Essentially, yes. That missing 90% is lost as metabolic heat.
90% is just lost.
It is. The salmon burns the vast majority of the energy it got from the plankton, just fighting the river current, staying warm in freezing water, keeping its heart beating. That energy desiccates into the Alaskan water as heat and is gone forever down the one-way street. So by the time the bear eats the salmon, only a tiny fraction of the original solar energy captured by the plankton remains available.
Which explains why a healthy ecosystem has billions of plankton, thousands of salmon,
Right.
but only a few bears.
Exactly.
The energy flow just runs out. The one-way street hits a dead end. But what about the roundabout? The bear digests the salmon, uses a tiny bit of it to grow, burns most of it for energy, and then, leaves droppings in the forest.
Yes.
Or a massive tree finally falls over. How does the forest not just fill up with dead trees and bear droppings?
This brings us to the unsung heroes of the ecosystem, the decomposers. In the Bioforge curriculum, they use a great acronym for this, the FBI.
The FBI.
Fungi, bacteria, and invertebrates.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
So instead of a cleanup crew just sweeping things under a rug, the FBI, the fungi and bacteria, they're more like molecular locksmiths, right?
That is exactly how they function.
Yeah.
They have specific chemical enzymes that pick the molecular locks holding a dead tree or animal waste together.
They dismantle it.
Right. They chemically dismantle those complex organic molecules, unlocking the atoms so they can float back into the cycle. They release the carbon back into the air as gas, and they return the nitrogen and water to the soil so a new plant can absorb them.
Okay, so they physically close the matter loop.
Yes, they do.
But based on the rules of the road we established earlier, they do not recycle energy.
They absolutely do not. Decomposers recycle the physical atoms, but the energy they extract from picking those chemical locks, they use it to power their own microscopic lives, and they release the very last of it as ambient heat.
In the Bioforge Educator Lab, 7th graders actually practice keeping this straight by physically mapping it out. They use different colored lines on their ecosystem maps.
Oh, that's a great exercise.
Yeah, they draw solid loops for the matter, showing the atoms cycling from the bear to the FBI to the soil, back to the tree. And they draw dashed lines for the energy, showing it entering from the sun, passing through the animals, and venting out into space as heat. Drawing it separately forces you to stop conflating the two.
Visualizing those two distinct pathways just transforms how you see the natural world. An ecosystem stops being just a static picture of a forest and becomes this active, breathing, thermodynamic engine.
And these food webs aren't just abstract science models on a whiteboard. When we look at traditional Alaskan food systems and the Alaska Cultural Standards, we see this exact science put into practice as a lived reality.
Absolutely.
Many Alaska communities understand these pathways implicitly through subsistence practices, seasonal abundance, and harvest cycles.
Yep. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, harvesting isn't viewed merely as resource extraction. It is a system of exchange.
Right.
For example, when salmon are harvested, there is a deep cultural practice of taking only what is needed and returning the fish carcasses to the river.
Which directly feeds the aquatic insects, which in turn feed the next generation of salmon fry.
Exactly. It is a literal matter loop maintained by cultural practice. It requires careful observation of the seasons and profound gratitude for the life given to sustain human life. Local and indigenous knowledge is intensely practical, place-based, and relational. By recognizing that humans are an active participant in the food web, these communities model long-term ecological sustainability. They practice stewardship of the land and water because they know the chemical and physical cycles have to be maintained.
But modern human impacts often disrupt these loops, right? We alter seasonal changes in energy availability through climate change. We radically alter the nitrogen cycle through industrial farming, just pumping artificial fertilizers into the soil.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
When we view ourselves as separate from the cycle, we break the loops.
But when we view ourselves as part of the cycle, we can learn to manage our impact and ensure those roundabouts keep turning.
Okay, so we've talked about ancient cultural knowledge and classical 17th century tree experiments, but I want to know how modern scientists are tracking this today.
Oh, the modern tech is amazing.
Because we're talking about invisible gases and microscopic atoms, how are we actually proving that this is how the roundabout and the one-way street work?
Well, the history of science is essentially a story of our models improving as our tools improve. I mean, Van Helmont had a simple scale to weigh dried dirt. Today, we have technologies that let us track the invisible. A really great example is the use of stable isotopes in modern ecology.
Wait, how do you track a specific atom in the wild?
So an isotope is a variation of an atom that has a slightly different physical weight. For instance, the nitrogen found in the deep ocean, nitrogen-15, has an extra neutron compared to the standard atmospheric nitrogen, which is nitrogen-14.
Okay.
And because of that extra neutron, marine nitrogen is physically heavier. Yeah, scientists can use mass spectrometers to detect that heavier weight, and they have found that heavier marine nitrogen inside the wood of giant trees in the Alaskan coastal forest.
Wait, how does deep ocean nitrogen end up inside a forest tree miles from the water?
The salmon. They act as biological conveyor belts. They accumulate that heavy marine nitrogen in the ocean, swim up the rivers, and the bears catch them. The bears drag the fish into the forest to eat, leaving scraps and their droppings on the forest floor. Then the FBI, the molecular locksmiths, break it down, and the tree roots absorb the heavy marine nitrogen.
That is wild.
We can literally trace the physical matter from the deep ocean into the heartwood of a tree using isotope geochemistry.
That is totally mind-blowing. But what about the energy and the carbon gases? Because isotopes track the solid matter, right? How do we track the invisible air moving in and out of a forest?
For that, we use tools like eddy covariance towers.
Eddy covariance towers.
Yeah, they are these high-tech sensory towers built high above the forest canopy. They use infrared gas analyzers that shoot lasers across a small air gap.
Lasers.
Yes. Because carbon dioxide absorbs infrared light, the lasers can detect exactly how dense the gas is.
So they're basically sniffing the air with lasers.
That's exactly it. And they pair those lasers with sonic anemometers that measure wind speed and direction, particularly updrafts and downdrafts, like 10 to 20 times a second. By measuring the density of the carbon dioxide moving down into the trees versus moving up away from the trees, scientists can measure real-time gas exchange. They can tell us exactly how much carbon dioxide is being sucked in by photosynthesis and how much is being exhaled by cellular respiration and decomposition.
So what does this all mean? It means that science isn't just a static list of facts to memorize for a test. It's a living, continuously evolving, evidence-based process of sense-making.
Precisely. As our tools evolve, from scales to mass spectrometers to laser towers, our understanding of this highly structured thermodynamic system just becomes sharper and more profound.
Which brings us right back to the core mission of the Bioforge Educator Lab. If there is one crucial distinction to take away from this deep dive, it's how these two fundamental forces operate. Energy flows through systems. It is the one-way street.
Right.
It arrives as sunlight, powers the biological work of life, and leaves as metabolic heat. Matter cycles within and between systems. It is the roundabout. The physical atoms of carbon, water, and nitrogen are endlessly unlocked by decomposers and built back into new life. Tracking these two separate pathways is how scientists understand life, survival, and how entire ecosystems change over time.
To understand life, follow the matter, and trace the energy.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We have talked a lot about ancient trees, Alaskan salmon, and bears. But consider the very device you are using to listen to this deep dive right now.
That device is built of matter plastics derived from ancient compressed organic life, metals mined from the Earth's crust. And the energy powering it is actively flowing through it, generating a slight warmth in your hand or against your ear, eventually dissipating as unrecoverable heat.
Yeah.
Consider how the carbon locked in the physical casing of your device might one day, far in the future, cycle back into the biosphere. How do our modern design systems disrupt or perhaps mimic these ancient natural cycles of the roundabout and the one-way street?
It really makes you look at everything around you just a little bit differently. The screen, the battery, the heat it gives off. It is all bound by the exact same physical laws as the Alaskan forest. We hope you've enjoyed stepping into the Bioforge lab with us today. As you go about the rest of your day, we challenge you to look around your own environment, your kitchen, your backyard, your neighborhood. One example of matter cycling or energy flowing that I can observe is